This video is now happening in 2026, but we still have to wrap up the past of 2025. Rare Books USA full year 2025 report. So we're just going to go through eBay, Etsy, and whatnot, revenue stats before we get into the fundamentals. And I'll give you my proposed guidance I'm thinking about moving forward, right? I'm thinking about it moving forward. So my stats for eBay, again, so to give context, right? I've been selling on eBay since 2024, July 2024. So about a year and a half. Yeah, about a year and a half, right? About a year and a half. So I'm still really new in this reselling game. But 2025 was my first full year, right? My first full year of really doing it. My first 6 months from July to December in 2024, that was like practice round. And now my full first year having the numbers is 2025. So I'm excited to share my results and you know, my ups, my downs, and what I'm looking forward to. So for eBay, what I did in eBay, my total sales was $36,838.78. So almost 37,000. I sold 1,187 items. My average sales price was $31. All right. And I had a couple auctions in there. My net sales from eBay was $24,604.15 after all fees and such. So from eBay, I got $24,000 after all net sales and such. My revenue on Etsy came out to be $2,225.41. I sold 79 items. So, you know, again, I only had a half a year of Etsy, and Etsy's a slower platform. So I'm really excited and I'm happy with those results. You know, I think I could double that at least next year, if not much more, as I keep compounding my store. And Whatnot, while I've been on Whatnot since really the beginning, as a buyer, I buy a lot on Whatnot. I'm really now trying to sell a little bit more. So I made $773 this year. You know, I had an early on Whatnot show that was successful. Then I didn't do a show for forever. Then I started doing some more consistent shows at the tail end of the year in Q4. So next year, that number is going to go up significantly because I'm starting to have a little bit more of a brand on Whatnot. Even if I don't sell, people know who I am. People know what I got, and people wanted to be a part of the show. So if I'm just consistent, you know, I think sky's the limit for me on Whatnot. And so let's look at all the stats together for the year, full year 2025, right? So eBay, we had $36,838.78. Etsy, we had $2,225.41, and we had on Whatnot $773. So that came out to be for 2025 $39,837.19. So very close to $40,000 in my first full year of selling on online as a bookseller, book reseller. That's awesome. My first initial revenue goal was 25,000. I updated it to 30,000, and I almost got it to 40,000. So I'm excited. I understand there's challenges ahead. So how do I double that, right? How do I double that? Can I double that in my current situation? So these are things I'm always thinking about. But you know, that's just because I'm a competitor and I'm a businessman, and you know, I want to run a good business. I want to continue to grow. But you know, when zooming out and really looking at the journey of 2025, you know, I'm proud of what I've done. You know, I went full time in this halfway into the year 2025, and you know, things ramped up even more. So what does a full year of full-time work with the compounding effects of what I've been doing, what does that look like for 2026? So yeah, I'm really excited where we're going and such like that. So we have the forward guidance. I'm still up in the air with it. The forward guidance for 2026, I'm thinking 70,000. Right? Let me get into the year first. And it's not a double, because to think you're just going to double every year as a business, that's tough to do, especially in this type of business as well. It's not like we're big tech. So, to get an almost double from 40,000 to 70, I think that's a nice stepping stone, right? And then that leaves room to update the guidance first. Like when I get more data, when I'm in the year, what does that look like? Okay, we can up it to 75. Okay, we can up it to 80,000, right? And so that's where we're at, and such. So, the goal obviously is to get 6 figures at some point. I know that marks 8,500 a month. So for my best month overall, if it was 6,000, my best month in December, I'm still 2.5K away from that. And so there's different ways I can get there, and I'm excited. But got to keep the head down, nose of the grindstone, continue to source books, continue to source better books, branch out, network more, and such. So overall excited what we did in 2025. And I think we're going to blow it out the water next year as well. Let's get down to the brass tacks of Rare Books USA full year 2025 financials, the balance sheet, the income statement, profit or loss, the cash flow. Let's look at that, because that's what really matters. Okay. So we don't talk about the balance sheet a lot, but the balance sheet, total current assets, we have $2,712. Total assets, including equipment, office equipment, insurance, all that, $9,757.53. So almost 10 grand. So we have almost 10 grand in assets, and that's not counting the books that actually are assets. And when I get into tax season and filing my taxes, that's where I'll show the difference in my financials. But what I show here is very conservative. Somebody asked me about why I do this method before, and I want to explain a little bit more now when I get into it, right? And so when we get over to my income statement, and I'm gonna talk about it more, right? But when I get into my income statement, I put all my book buys under general expenses, okay? And this is a conservative way of doing it, right? It's general expenses to my operating expenses, because I need books to operate, right? Books are unsold books that are in inventory, that are just hanging around, that you're trying to sell at some point, even if it's not listed. That's an asset. It's an asset. That's not an expense. It only becomes an expense when it gets sold. That it only the asset of a book only becomes an expense once it's realized. So if you spent $3 on a book, it's a $3 asset until it's sold. And if you sell it for $3, okay, if you sell it for $10, it costs you $3, your profit is $7, right? But you would never have seen that profit if you didn't have that $3 book. That's why it's an asset, right? That's the distinction. That's what you have to understand. And so when I get into tax season, I'm gonna look at what did I put in inventory this year, and what sold, right? And so whatever I put in inventory there, how much I almost put like 4,000 items on inventory this year. I would say 2,000 postcards, 2,000 books, right? And so, when I do my stats, so there's going to be at least 2,000 books that are going to be assets, right? And then when I get into the expenses, right, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to subtract that off, right? Whatever. And so whatever books I sold this year, those are the true expenses. Okay. Those are the true expenses. Whatever books I sold this year, those are the true expenses when it comes to books. I I just do it this way because on a day-to-day basis, I need to be able to track my cash flow the best and conservatively. Because if I have money going out like that, if I'm buying books, that's not technically an expense, but when I'm buying books, that's a quasi expense. Like I have to pay bills and stuff like that. So I can't just not reference that, right? And so finally, let's get into the income statement, profit and loss for the year 2025. I know that was a roundabout way, but that's important. And I needed to make that distinction and explain that again before I move forward. So the income this year, sales, I had 24,000, other revenue, I had 1,000. And then, and so just a little bit of a distinction. My Patreon money goes into other revenue. I put my royalties. So mostly, I would say my Rare Books USA financials, like these financials are 99.99% Rare Books USA, and the other 1% is like actual media royalties and such. But mostly Rare Books USA, which a lot of it is intertwined. Cost of goods sold, that's again, that's expense. So this is from a consignment I just recently did and had to do a payout. So that's really an expense as well. Automobile expenses, that's only going to rise because I got a new car. All that. So we talked about most of the things. And so my operating expenses at the end of the year was $24,624.25, which came out to operating income or a net income of $332.84, which essentially is 333. Wow. If you know anything about me, if you know anything about the numbers I share with gematria and stuff, what are the odds? I can't fake that. I can't, like, these numbers are coming in all the time. Like I can't manipulate that. So it's powerful to me to see, essentially, if you round up $333 positive of net income. I ran a profitable business this year. And that's on my conservative metrics. If I take out some of the expenses and the assets, because most of the general expenses are assets, right? So I was even more profitable. But from my conservative standpoint, I was able to do it positively, and that's what I'm proud of. And hopefully that continues to grow in 2026. It needs to grow in 2026. I need to start having more income come in, more net income, more positive income coming in to survive and do this business. So that was cool to see. If anyone has any questions on this, I love talking about financials. I'm always looking at stock financials of different companies and stuff. So it fascinates me on how you can move numbers, manipulate numbers, but still also follow the rules. Like, I'm not doing anything illegal or anything. But that's why big companies, they have books internally. They have books for Uncle Sam, the tax offices, and they have books for investors. And so while I do try to keep my financials as transparent and condensed as possible, there is some different variants, but that's okay. The cash run rate right now is 4 months. So numbers today, I reach zero balance if cash is received and spent as projected. I'm going to be spending a lot less, especially in book buying in 2026. I'm going to be a lot more smart about it. I'm not going to be I'm not going to be as willy-nilly. I'm going to lower my cost per book for sure. My cash buffer until I reach zero balance, if no more cash is received, 3 months. So, I'm trying to work on that. But, overall, I think I'm in a nice position. I do have cash in other places I can put into the business, which, I don't mind doing it. But I'd rather just build the business so it can sustain itself. But I do have capital I can inject into the business to build these cash buffers up if I want to use it. So that's how I'm playing it. I'm playing it conservative plus playing it close. And the total cash in and out, the difference was $250 in December. So I'm really working on it.